It was just after 11 p.m. on August 1, 2025, when an engineer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, in Pasadena, California, sat down for a routine telemetry check on Voyager 1. This was nothing new. The engineer had performed this exact task hundreds of times before as part of the ongoing maintenance and monitoring of one of humanity's most iconic spacecraft. The checks were standard, logging the probe's position, confirming its transmission vector, and recording its antenna orientation. These were all normal, everyday operations in the life of a spacecraft 24 billion kilometers from Earth. The telemetry data came in without any immediate problems. Voyager's position was as expected, its transmission vector confirmed, and the antenna orientation was logged accurately. The engineer flagged the file, ready to move on to the next task. But then, something unusual caught his eye. He rechecked the data. The antenna's orientation had shifted. It wasn't a significant change, just a few degrees, a barely measurable shift by any standard used in Earth orbit. But there was one crucial fact. Voyager 1 wasn't in Earth orbit. It was 24 billion kilometers away, in deep space, far beyond the reach of our planet's gravitational pull. At this extreme distance, even the smallest deviation in the antenna's orientation was a matter of consequence. A few degrees of angular change didn't just mean the antenna was pointing at a different patch of sky. It meant the probe's line of sight was now aimed at a completely different region of the cosmos. The engineer pulled up the telemetry file again. His curiosity piqued. He checked the command history, examining the full archive for the past 72 hours to see if there had been any changes in the instructions sent to Voyager 1. He needed to find out if this shift in orientation had been commanded, whether it was part of a planned adjustment to the probe's course. But there was nothing. No such command had been sent. The data was clear. Voyager had reoriented itself without any instructions, as if acting on its own accord. The probe wasn't pointing at its usual targets. It wasn't directed at any of the locations where it had been instructed to send its signals. Instead, it was pointing precisely at a location that lay weeks ahead of where the interstellar object known as 3I, Atlas, would be at that moment. The engineer paused, contemplating the possibilities. Voyager's antenna was now directed at a location weeks in advance of 3I, Atlas's current position. Not only that, it was aimed at a predicted future location of the object, its trajectory in the coming weeks. The realization hit. This wasn't a random shift. Voyager 1 wasn't malfunctioning. It had been reoriented, and the change wasn't just random or accidental. It was deliberate, purposeful, and far beyond the expected behavior of any piece of machinery, especially one so far from home. He didn't wait long to act. Picking up the phone, he dialed his supervisor directly, bypassing the formal reporting channels. He knew this was something worth investigating immediately. Within 48 hours, Voyager's telemetry data had been reclassified under internal review. The terms used to describe the spacecraft's operational status began to shift. The engineers at JPL, who had once referred to Voyager as an inert piece of equipment, now started using different language that suggested Voyager had become more than just a passive observer in space. The conversation within the team quickly turned to one word: active. This wasn't just a minor error in the data or an accidental blip. This was something far more profound, an event that signaled that Voyager 1 had entered a new phase of its mission, one that even its original engineers had never anticipated. What followed was a thorough forensic physics analysis to understand what had happened and what it meant. Engineers were now working with a theory that suggested the anomaly might not just be a mechanical glitch, but a potential signal of something much larger, a scenario in which humanity's oldest spacecraft had encountered something extraordinary, something unlike any other anomaly detected in the cosmos. Voyager 1, which had been drifting silently through space for nearly 50 years, had now somehow altered its course without any intervention from Earth. This was no longer just a spacecraft operating according to pre-programmed instructions. Voyager was, in some ways, now interacting with its surroundings in a way it was never designed to do. But the question remained, why? To truly grasp the significance of the anomaly, one needs to understand what Voyager 1 actually was and what it was never meant to do at this stage in its life. To understand the true significance of the anomaly, we need to first delve into the remarkable history of Voyager 1 itself. Launched on September 5, 1977, Voyager 1 was originally intended for a mission of exploration that would last just 5 years. The spacecraft was designed to perform flybys of Jupiter and Saturn, taking advantage of a rare planetary alignment that allowed it to utilize a technique known as gravity assist. This technique allowed Voyager to increase its speed without the need for additional fuel by utilizing the gravitational pull of Jupiter and Saturn, giving it the necessary momentum to continue its journey out into the outer reaches of the solar system. Gravity assist, or gravitational slingshot, is a brilliant method of space travel that exploits the laws of physics to conserve energy and propel spacecraft further than would be possible through conventional means. By passing close to a planet, Voyager effectively steals a tiny amount of the planet's orbital momentum, using that boost to accelerate itself while simultaneously slowing down the planet by an infinitesimally small amount. It's a delicate dance, a feat of precision engineering that enables spacecraft to travel vast distances across space. In the case of Voyager 1, this technique propelled it on its journey out of the solar system and into interstellar space, far beyond the reach of any known human technology at the time. The mission was supposed to last only 5 years, but here we are, 48 years later, with Voyager 1 still operational, still sending data back to Earth, and still uncovering the mysteries of the cosmos. That's a remarkable feat of engineering. But what makes it even more extraordinary is that Voyager was never meant to survive this long. In fact, the spacecraft's designers fully expected it to shut down much earlier. The power it generated via 3 radioisotope thermoelectric generators, RTGs, would over time decrease as the plutonium-238 fuel decayed. By the end of its first 5 years, the electrical output from these generators was expected to drop significantly, forcing the spacecraft to shut down its systems one by one. Yet, as each year passed, Voyager continued to send data. Even after the power output dropped to a mere fraction of what it originally was, the spacecraft defied expectations and continued to function. Over the decades, engineers at JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, had to be creative, shutting down non-essential systems and focusing on maintaining only the core equipment needed for Voyager's communications and scientific instruments. As of 2025, Voyager 1's electrical output was barely enough to power 3 standard incandescent light bulbs, approximately 276 watts of power. That's a far cry from the original 470 watts it produced at launch, but it was enough to keep Voyager's essential systems operational, including its communications hardware, magnetometer, and plasma wave instrument. These components were crucial for maintaining Voyager's connection to Earth as they allowed the spacecraft to continue sending data back home. Voyager's communication system, in particular, relies on its 3.7-meter high-gain dish antenna, which acts as the probe's primary link to Earth. But there's a catch. Voyager 1 is so far from Earth that it takes over 22 hours for a signal to travel from the spacecraft to Earth, and another 22 hours for a response to return. That means that any command sent to Voyager, such as a request to change its orientation, requires a full 45 hours for round-trip communication. At this distance, every decision is crucial. Every command is carefully planned and executed with the knowledge that the probe's power is finite, and any attempt to reorient the spacecraft must be performed with extreme precision. And yet, on that fateful night in August 2025, something happened that couldn't be explained by any of the systems in place. Voyager had reoriented itself not in response to any command from Earth, but on its own. The fact that Voyager's attitude control system executed this reorientation without any corresponding command in the mission logs was a profound anomaly. The probe systems had always adhered to the strict laws of physics. The gyroscopes and attitude control thrusters were designed to make very small, incremental changes to the spacecraft's orientation, but they could only respond to specific commands sent by Earth. Any shift in Voyager's orientation without prior instruction violated every established protocol. And yet, on that night, Voyager had moved, aiming its antenna at a future target, one that lay weeks ahead of its current position. The implications were staggering. The anomaly wasn't just a minor malfunction, it was an event that demanded explanation. Voyager 1 systems are meticulously designed, relying on precise calculations and years of monitoring to maintain their functionality. But this reorientation was beyond anything that had been anticipated or programmed. The probe, which had been quietly drifting through space for nearly 5 decades, had executed a change that could not be accounted for by the known laws of physics. Voyager 1's attitude control system is powered by mechanical gyroscopes and small thrusters. The gyroscopes maintain the spacecraft's orientation through conservation of angular momentum. Essentially, once the gyroscope is spinning, its momentum resists any external force that would alter its direction. For decades, this mechanism worked flawlessly, allowing Voyager to maintain a stable orientation in the vast, cold emptiness of space. The thrusters, on the other hand, are designed to make very small adjustments to the spacecraft's orientation. These thrusters use a small amount of fuel to create controlled bursts of force that reorient the spacecraft when necessary. But these adjustments can only happen when a signal is sent from Earth. The signal takes time to travel, about 22 hours each way, depending on Voyager's distance from Earth. This means that any change in orientation has to correspond to a command that was sent hours earlier in real time. So, when the telemetry data showed that Voyager's antenna had shifted its orientation without any prior instruction, the engineers were left with only one conclusion: something had affected the spacecraft's systems, something beyond the normal control mechanisms. What was even more puzzling was the direction in which the antenna had shifted. Instead of pointing at its previous target, Voyager 1's antenna was now aimed at a completely new location in Space 1 that lay far ahead of where 3I Atlas was at that moment, yet weeks ahead of where the interstellar visitor would be in the future. This wasn't just a random direction change. Voyager had reoriented itself towards something specific, something that wasn't on its scheduled trajectory. The position it aimed at was far ahead of 3I Atlas's present position, pointing at a predicted future location. How could this be explained? The answer lay in the fact that the change wasn't random, it was a directed action. The antenna had shifted with precision, as though it was tracking something specific. But what could have caused Voyager to make such a move? What force, what mechanism could have prompted this sudden reorientation? And why was it aimed at something as specific as 3I Atlas's predicted location weeks into the future? This anomaly, this unexplained shift, marked a turning point in the history of Voyager 1, No longer was it just a piece of human technology floating through space. Voyager had become part of something far bigger, something that even its designers couldn't have foreseen: a contact scenario, an interaction between humanity's oldest probe and an anomalous interstellar visitor. But what was 3I Atlas, and why was Voyager 1 suddenly interacting with it in ways that made no sense according to conventional physics? To fully understand the ramifications of this mysterious anomaly, it's essential to recognize that Voyager 1 wasn't just a spacecraft. It carried with it a cultural and scientific message: the golden record. This 1.2-inch gold-plated copper disk was one of humanity's most ambitious projects, launched with the intention of sending a message to the stars. It was humanity's attempt at outreach, a signal to any intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations that might one day encounter it. Designed under the guidance of a committee that included some of the most brilliant scientists and thinkers of the 20th century, the Golden Record contained a collection of images, sounds, and music that represented the essence of life on Earth. Among the many contents, the record featured 115 photographs detailing everything from human anatomy and terrestrial geography to examples of human civilization, mathematical diagrams, and scientific symbols. In addition to visual elements, it carried 90 minutes of audio, including music from Beethoven to Chuck Berry, as well as greetings in 55 different languages. The purpose of the Golden Record was simple yet profound: to serve as a time capsule, a message for any intelligent life that might come across it. It wasn't intended as an immediate communication tool, but rather as a gesture, an invitation from Earth to any extraterrestrial intelligence capable of receiving it. The disk's cover included instructions on how to play it, designed to be decipherable by any civilization capable of working with physical objects. And at the heart of the instructions was a unique and universally recognized reference point: the 21 cm hydrogen spin-flip transition. The hydrogen spin-flip transition is one of the most universally identifiable features in the universe. Every star in the galaxy is surrounded by hydrogen, and every galaxy is threaded with hydrogen clouds. This transition, at 1,420 megahertz, is a stable frequency emitted by neutral hydrogen atoms, making it an ideal timekeeping reference that any advanced civilization capable of studying the electromagnetic spectrum would likely encounter. Now, the twist. In October 2025, 48 years after the Golden Record was encoded with the hydrogen frequency as its universal timing reference, something astonishing happened. 3I Atlas, the interstellar object that had been traveling through our solar system, transmitted a structured electromagnetic signal precisely at 1,420 megahertz, the exact frequency of the hydrogen line, the very same frequency the Golden Record designers had selected as a universal beacon. Was this a coincidence? The fact that 3I Atlas transmitted at the same frequency was far from trivial. It wasn't just a random emission. It was a deliberate act of resonance, a cosmic alignment that suggested recognition through the lens of theoretical physics. This could not simply be a fluke. The event signaled something much deeper, a cosmic handshake across the vastness of space, one that spanned not just distance but time as well. The Golden Record had been sent out into the cosmos in 1977, and nearly 5 decades later, the universe had responded at precisely the frequency that had been encoded as humanity's signal. But that wasn't all. This convergence in frequency wasn't merely symbolic. It suggested that 3I Atlas was aware. It understood the significance of the frequency, and it knew what that frequency represented. This wasn't just a random encounter. It was a mutual recognition between two intelligences, separated by light years and decades, but communicating nonetheless. As remarkable as the frequency match was, there was more to the story, far more. Researchers soon discovered something even more extraordinary hidden within the audio data of the golden record. Advanced signal processing techniques uncovered a repeating tone embedded within the natural soundscapes recorded on the disc. This tone wasn't audible to the human ear, but when isolated, amplified, and analyzed, it revealed a striking pattern, a sequence of prime numbers. Prime numbers are the building blocks of mathematics. They are the fundamental integers that are only divisible by 1 and themselves. Across human history, prime numbers have fascinated mathematicians for their pure, intrinsic properties. But they are also considered to be universal, the same arithmetic that governs the structure of matter across the universe. The discovery that the golden record carried a hidden sequence of prime numbers wasn't just a random anomaly, it was a deliberate choice. Prime numbers are the most likely basis for a universal mathematical language. Their occurrence in the signal from 3i, Atlas suggested that the transmission wasn't merely noise, it was a sophisticated form of communication. 3i, Atlas wasn't just transmitting electromagnetic radiation at the hydrogen frequency, it was using mathematics to convey information using a universal language to bridge the gap between two civilizations separated by an almost unimaginable distance. This prime sequence wasn't just an interesting mathematical curiosity. It was a message, one that had been encoded on the golden record in 1977 and now, decades later, had been recognized and responded to by an intelligent, advanced extraterrestrial source. What did this mean? If 3i, Atlas, had transmitted these prime numbers in response to the golden record's invitation, it wasn't simply a one-way transmission, it was a dialogue, a cosmic communication using the most universal language of all mathematics. This wasn't a random encounter. This was a response to a signal that had been sent out into the universe with the hope of finding someone, something, who would recognize it. And now, in 2025, that hope seemed to have been realized. The question remained, what did 3i, Atlas, want to say? Was this just the first step in a larger conversation, or was it a one-off response? What would happen next? After the August 2025 anomaly, Voyager 1 systems continued to record bizarre signals patterns that no one could explain, and that stretched the limits of our understanding of physics. The spacecraft's magnetometer and plasma wave instruments began to pick up unusual patterns in the electromagnetic environment, culminating in the detection of a recursive harmonic sequence. This pattern repeated every 19.7 minutes, structured, self-similar, and clearly non-random. It was not the kind of noise that one might expect from natural phenomena like pulsars. It was different, more precise, more deliberate. This was not just random radiation or static. The signal exhibited a quality that scientists recognized as adaptive signal transmission. In simple terms, it was a form of communication in which the transmitter adjusted its output to optimize the quality of the signal based on feedback. The self-correcting nature of the signal was a hallmark of advanced communication systems, ones that are capable of monitoring their own transmission quality and adjusting accordingly. But this wasn't something that could happen with conventional physics. The transmission was compensating for Voyager 1's limitations, its age, its power constraints, its degraded antenna, and it was doing so in real time despite the fact that Voyager systems had no way of communicating this back to the source. For 3i, Atlas, to transmit an adaptive, self-correcting signal to Voyager, 1-inch real-time required a communication system capable of processing feedback far faster than the speed of light would allow under conventional physics. This defied everything we thought we knew about communication across vast interstellar distances. Then came the final piece of the puzzle. Voyager 1's software, which had been programmed to decode 8-bit telemetry data, suddenly began to process 128-bit outputs. This wasn't a simple glitch. The probe system had been upgraded remotely through pure signal, no physical hardware intervention, just a transmission of data that completely rewrote Voyager's operating protocols. This was unprecedented. Voyager 1 had been upgraded, reprogrammed by the very signal it had been receiving. This was a software event, a completely new phenomenon in the history of interstellar communication. The engineers at JPL were stunned. The spacecraft, which had been drifting through the dark void of space for nearly half a century, had become part of something much larger than a simple scientific mission. It had become an interface between two civilizations, humanity's and the one that had transmitted the signal. After August 2025, Voyager 1 was given a new classification, Watcher Active. For the first time in 48 years, it was not considered a malfunctioning spacecraft, but rather a living, breathing part of a communication system far beyond human comprehension. Voyager 1 was no longer just a relic. It had become a node, a translator, standing between two civilizations that had never before made contact. This was the moment when humanity realized that the universe was far more interconnected than we had ever imagined. Voyager, once cast into the void as a lonely messenger, had become an active participant in something profound. The interstellar contact corridor was now open. The question was no longer what 3I Atlas was. The question now was, what will we say next? Call to action. This discovery marks just the beginning of an entirely new chapter in the search for life beyond our planet. What does it mean that we've made contact? Are we ready for the next step in this cosmic conversation? Join us as we continue to explore the vastness of space and uncover the mysteries of the universe. Subscribe, like, and share this video, and stay tuned for updates on the most groundbreaking discovery of our time.